Happy Palm Sunday to everybody this nice day. I could not, unfortunately, go to church today because Melanie Regato had contacted every single church in the Etobicoke and near where I live and told them that I was a mental patient and a mental donor addict and that I would cause a disturbance and I would be dealing in the church. Okay, whatever. I would like to also sincerely say that I do not target, people say I target certain people, that I'm just, you're being mean to Melanie, or you're targeting Sandra Long, or you're targeting Ash, or you're targeting Jonas Regato, or you're targeting Norman Brown, or you're targeting certain people. The reason why this is the microphone, the camera apparently picks it up. This is why you feel I'm targeting. If you feel that I'm targeting these specific individuals, that's because these specific individuals have been targeting me for the past 4 years. For the past 4 years, Jonas Regato has made it his mission, as well as enlisting Melanie, has made it his mission to make me his companion. When the reality of the matter is, I'm a 55-year-old woman. I'm over 20 years older than him. I think he's about 37, 32, anyways, late 30s, whatever that is, how old he is. I am 55. I turned 55 in December 1st of 1969, of this year. And I have, so I am 20 some odd years older than him. They set out 4 years ago, this April, to make it their mission to ruin my life or to get Jonas Regato as my companion. Jonas Regato had spent a lot of time, as I've spoken before, in a mental institution down in Brazil after Lara was born, and the only reason he came back was because John Arnott had wanted him back because Lara was John's daughter, and they needed to save face, so to speak, because Jonas Regato because of the marriage with Melanie, and he was chosen to be Melanie's husband to save face. Melanie Regato yesterday had, let me speak about what I do on Saturdays. What I do on Saturdays ever since probably January of this year is I go to, I go to Nigeria. I've spoken about my Nigerian family before. They had actually come here from Nigeria in July of last year, and when I was living in Mississauga, I'm looking for a picture. When I was living in Mississauga, I met them there, and they lived there. We lived together there. They lived there, and I lived there. They lived there till the end of September, and I was there until the end of October. So basically from July until September, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I was asked when their mother had to go forward to Saskatchewan and take Presco, the second eldest daughter, over to Saskatchewan. I was asked to help look after the kids while Emmanuel worked. And so I helped get them ready for school. I helped make their lunches. I helped do the laundry. I made sure that the kids went off to school, that they came back from school, that they did their homework, and if they had any problems with their homework, I helped them do their homework. So therefore, I became Auntie Michelle. And I love them very dearly. Our Heavenly Father put them in my life because of the fact that I didn't have a family. My family was down in North Carolina. I was adopted into the family down there. Certain members of the Smith family has adopted me into their family, and as well as certain members of the Smith family have been grafted into my heart, and that happened years ago, good year, 2 years ago actually. And anything I do speak about in terms of the Smiths or in terms of Duncan or in terms of anyone down there, it can be clarified. It goes directly to the police down there or their bodyguards. And the bodyguards, they can contact the police up here in Toronto, which I don't really personally think that the police in Toronto do any good besides drive around and follow me to witness me doing any criminal activity, which they have not yet. And I will speak more about that later. Anyways, so I would have been arrested 3 years ago. If any of the information I'm speaking about is untrue or in any ways defaming Duncan's character, Kate's character, character, their children's character, Jessica's character, or reputation character, and anyone else. Okay, so let me just speak about that first and foremost. I don't know if you can picture this. My phone isn't all that great. You probably can't see. I can see it. There's a good picture of them. Those are my Nigerian family. Then from the left to the right, anyways, that's Prescott with the coat and the braids. With the glasses, that's Joan, she's 16. That's Augusta, and then that's her mother Linda, and then that's Calvin, and on the end, the oldest boy, that's Lucky. I do not know their Nigerian names, and actually I could not pronounce them, and I did not want to do them justice. That was the day I took them to the St. Lawrence Market. I take them to various places in downtown Toronto. They live out in Scarborough. And so yesterday was, Wednesday is Pascal's birthday. She turns 15. I took Pascal and I took Augusta to the wedding showcase over at Reed's Distillery. That's Pascal without her braids, and that's Augusta with braids. She's 10. So I took them to Reed's Distillery. Yesterday I took them out to, like I said, Pascal's birthday on Wednesday. She'll be 15. I bought a cake at the San Remo Bakery and for her birthday, and we went back to the house afterwards, but the whole thing was to take them out to have pictures taken. She wanted to have pictures done originally. She wanted to have them done over at Joni Restaurant at the Hyatt Regency Hotel over on 4th Avenue in Toronto. But Melanie had contacted the Hyatt Regency Hotel and told them that I was coming in with 2 children that I was going to take up to the hotel room and have a raping schedule and be raped. I don't say bedded. Everybody calls them bedding schedules, but they're called raping schedules, and that's what they're called. So I was spoken to about this, and when I say spoken to, everybody who has seen me out in the open, they have seen a man walking with me. That man is either Mark Gallagher, or who is an angel of protection, or Jacob Baderick, who is an angel of protection. I have angels that surround me, sentries that surround me. You don't believe in angels? Seek your Bible, seek our Heavenly Father. I've been speaking by Heavenly Father. Their angels are messengers. I spoke about before that Tim Sheets wrote 2 really good books on angel armies and angels' decrees. There are 3 books actually, and those are books. There are other books written on the subject, so that's that. This is me. We are at the Royal York Hotel. I don't think, you can sort of see it. All of us at the Royal York Hotel getting pictures taken. I don't approve of Prescott's outfit, but in the end, I would like to state something. Prescott hates to wear dresses. Many young girls hates to wear dresses. The reason why some young girls do not like to wear dresses is mostly because they were either molested, raped as children, or as adults, as young girls. Prescott was in, all of them actually survived the genocide over in Las Vegas, Nigeria. Prescott herself has been a victim of the genocide, and that's all I'm going to have to say. Wearing a short dress for her with bicycle shorts underneath is a huge amount of healing. That is a healing thing. I did not approve of the dress or the boots. I did not approve. I would have preferred her to wear stockings and proper shoes. But she was allowed, her mother allowed her to go out. Joan's dress, she hiked up to above her mid-thigh. I spoke to her about it, and I said, no, that dress is a long dress. You bought it as a long dress. You wear it as a long dress. When you wear it as a short dress, it doesn't look appropriate. The other thing I said, if you want to bring it up a little bit, then you bring it up just to your knees. She wore socks and running shoes because her feet are still healing as a result of being a victim of the genocide. I spoke to these young girls before we went out. They were 14, 15, and 16. What I said to them, I said, the reason why I want you to dress appropriately is because there are boys your age, there are men older, there are young men, and who would catch the eye, men who would want to do and say things to you that are inappropriate at your age, that I don't like, that your mother doesn't like, and that your father doesn't like. These are girls in which I do believe that, as I was taught when I was younger, to dress appropriately for their age. Now, I want to speak about the police officer right now. So that was what they wore, okay? They're Nigerian, and that was what they wore. The scarf is a Nigerian custom. She's 16 now, so she wears a scarf on her head, and that's what she does when she goes out to get dressed up. For Joan, I'm speaking about, not Prescal. So let's say, the police. I went to San Remo Bakery to pick up my birthday cake that I ordered for Prescal. They never get birthday cake. Apparently, it's too expensive. It was too expensive, and it was in Nigeria to have birthday cake, which, I mean, I could very well understand that. So I went to San Remo Bakery and went out and bought a birthday cake. I've spoken about him before, Detective Constable Adam Halligan. I had done a video testimony about Melinda Jeffries assaulting me at the Sent Ones conference. I had also done a written report about Melinda Jeffries. I went into 23rd Division and did that. He called the division and asked a police officer to follow me, like Sandra Long has called the police before and had police officers follow me at the library, such as other individuals. I think it's been mostly Sandra, and that I was dealing at the library, dealing drugs at the library, and Ash. So they followed me around. This police officer, a female police officer, I don't know her name, followed me on the GO train. Now, those of you who took the GO train or any transit yesterday know it was an incredible nightmare. I usually take the GO train straight through Lakeshore West, straight through to Eglinton, and then a bus up to their house, or have them meet me there if we're going back downtown. All Lakeshore West trains and Stouffville lines to Kennedy Station were stopped because of construction. TTC was stopped between Jane and Oxington, so I could not take a subway from Royal York up to Kennedy on line 2. So what I had to do is take the GO train in from Mimico over into Union, take the subway from Union to Bloor-Yonge, change the subway's train over at Bloor-Yonge, get on the Yonge line, get on the Yonge line at Union, get off at Bloor and Yonge, get on the Bloor station, get on line number 2 and head to Kennedy, get off at Kennedy and take the bus. So it was a rather interesting rigmarole happening. Anyways, this police officer followed me. This police officer watched me do exactly what I did. The police officer got close to the point where in my bag I had five Easter bags that I bought at Dollarama with some little Easter presents for the kids and the cake as well. The police officer watched me go into the house, pick up the girls, take the girls over to Kennedy Station, and then proceed to go take the Kennedy subway straight back through to Yonge and Bloor, get off, get on in Yonge, the Yonge line straight, and then go down to Union, get off at Union. When I was on the subway with him before I got off at Bloor, there was a gentleman, and I say that term loosely, who decided he wanted to stand up and take pictures of the girls. I stood up in front of the girls 4 times as he tried to round on either side and try to take pictures. The police officer saw him, and the police officer got his information, and hopefully he will have been charged, arrested, or at the very least fined. I don't know what happened in that respect. The police officer continued to follow me. The police officer followed me to the point where I went into the Fairmont Royal York Hotel because I had been alerted not to go to Tony Restaurant because Melanie had said that to others that I was taking these girls, and every time I go out, I'm taking these children to a bedding schedule, quote unquote bedding. It is a raping schedule. I believe that is Melanie's way of trying to justify the fact that she has done this and sexually exploited her daughters, and Lara, Jasmine, and Summer, to the point where they have been their genitals have been mutilated. That is done, and Carol Arnott has been fully aware of this. So I went into the Fairmont Royal York Hotel, and I asked the staff member, I said, this is her birthday, and the girls would like to take some pictures, so would we be allowed to just mill around in your lobby and take some pictures? I said to a staff member, they said, sure, no problem. So we did that for about an hour maybe, and that's what we did. Took some pictures, and then we left. And when we left, as we went out the door and stood in front of the train station, the police officer was with me through the whole way in the Fairmont Royal York Hotel. The police officer was following me, and I said, what would you like to do now? She had a bit of money, and she said she wanted to go to McDonald's. She wanted to go to McDonald's and get French fries, and then she wanted to get what do you call them? They're patties. They're Jamaican spice patties. I know what they are. Anyway, so we went to McDonald's. We sat in Union, had a snack, and then we left. And we went to Union Station, Yonge line, up to Bloor, got off at Bloor, went Bloor to Kennedy, got off at Kennedy, took the train back, the bus back to their house, and the police officer followed me the whole way. Notice that I went into the house for 2 hours. The reason why I went into the house for 2 hours is because their mother made a wonderful, delicious Nigerian meal with what I thought was potatoes, but it was fried plantains and some rice, and I don't even venture to guess what it was called to put on top of the rice, but it was very spicy and very delicious. And then we had the cake, and that was it. And then I spoke to her, had some conversation. We had a nice visit. The kids had a nice visit with them, the rest of the kids. And then I left. And then continued to go back the whole way back. Bus, subway, change lines, Union Station, GO train. Now, here's the interesting part. When I was in Union Station, after I went and got my second sample of the Pringles, and I was walking down Union Station, the way you go through, you come out from the subway, and then there's that place where it's like you're outside, but you're not really. And then you go in, back in Union train station, and then you go follow the signs for the GO train. And there was the Pringles samples set up there, and then you go forward. And as I was going forward to go up towards the GO train, there was Melanie. Melanie was standing there with a number of people from her Connect group. I guess they were from her Connect group, or maybe they were her friends. They were wearing Mardi Gras masks, and Melanie was wearing a lingerie. She was wearing a long blue satin, and it could have been a dress. Yes, it could have been a dress, but it was not a dress, because I asked Duncan about it, and Duncan says, no, I've seen that as lingerie. It is lingerie. It was spaghetti straps. It was navy blue satin. She was not wearing panties or anything underneath it. She was wearing high heels with it, and she was standing there with they all had Mardi Gras masks. There was one individual there wearing a beige shirt and a black skirt. They were all someone else was wearing a black evening dress. It looked like it was evening dress with a long evening dress with sequins on it, and some high heels. I did not stop to speak. However, Melanie did shout, this is what a companion is all about. I am a methadone addict. Melanie Regato, the security came up behind him, as well as the police were called. Melanie Regato carries with her a Swiss Army Huntsman wooden knife, as well as her little Szechuan bottle concoction of a crack and methadone. She was not, I don't know if she was arrested. Obviously not, because she is in church today. She's at the office. The other thing I want to speak about, I will speak about that later, but the fact that she did say that and she was there, Murray said that if she recognizes you, then you will lose your jobs. There was a number of them there. So they decided to wear Mardi Gras mask. I stated, you are in the wrong city. You're not New Orleans, as a joke. I knew who they were. I knew they must have been from Toronto, and I was completely unaware that it was in Melanie until I passed her and I heard what she said. Melanie is angry because of the fact that her and John has set out to ruin my life. This is the 4th year, the end of April, and this is to be a companion. Melanie is also angry because she knows what's going to end up happening to both her and John Regato, and I would venture to guess they would be charged, and eventually they have to answer to the powers in their enemy's camp. And when I say the powers, the people in the enemy's camp, there is a whole line of authority, I would like to say it's like a pyramid, where they take on names of animals, or they are given in terms of status. Now we have someone like Jeff Young, and then the way they lose their status is if they haven't fulfilled the requirements of their status, then which they have to do. So if you get to a certain status, those requirements include no, I don't like to say I'm going to say, I don't like to invoke the spirit of death, so I usually say annihilate, that's how I say it. So it includes annihilating people. It also includes that to be in a certain status, includes, has to deal with theft. Now to reach this certain status, they would have to. So we have now, at one point, this is how I'm going to say it. Melinda Jeffries, she was a hyena. That's what they called her, a hyena. And John Tist was he would have been a cheat. They called him a hyena as well at some point. And see, they go down like a hyena, and this is what they call them, a hyena. And then Melanie was always a gazelle. A gazelle is one of the weakest that they say. If you look at the gazelle in the Serengeti, gazelles often, a lot of their prey will eat their feet in order to have them stop leaping, and then they will annihilate them that way. So we have Melanie was a gazelle, and then Jonathan Sugato was a cheetah, and then so Melinda Jeffries was a hyena, and then they go down in stature. So if you notice, even in the midst of how the way it works out in the wild, so we have like a hyena, a cheetah, a gazelle, and then they go down in status to like a crocodile or a lizard. Now we see that, or they continue to go down in status, and this is how it works. This is how what I've been hearing, and this is how, and then they go down in status to a garbage can or to a trash compactor, it's called, and then finally to a patsy. And we all know what a patsy is. What a definition of a patsy is. A patsy is someone that they basically leave out, hang out to dry. So, a vulture was another one. Mary Audrey Raycroft's a vulture. Maggot is another one. Before you get to be a garbage can, there's a maggot. And to be a maggot, I guess, what they have done is they pour maggots on top of the actual person who becomes a maggot, and they have to sit in maggots. So when they don't fulfill the requirements, those who are higher up than them, they make them what they are. Melanie was a gazelle, and now she's a garbage can. Jono Sugato, like I said, he went down in status because he was a warlock, and he still is, but because of his mental illness and because of his the way he is maniacally, because a warlock would have a high status in the satanic. I'm talking about this in the satanic organization, right? Okay, so because he was a warlock, he went down in status, and now he is garbage because he has not been able to fulfill the requirements, and that's what happens. He will continue what he is, and they've told him to stop, and he hasn't stopped, and he's been threatened, like I've heard over the microphone, that he eventually will be annihilated, and if the police don't get him into a prison, the organization will get him, and they will annihilate him. In Niagara, they have a place where they lynch individuals, and they know this. That's why they try so hard. Jeffrey Onsi has gone back to St. Catharines. He has been arrested, and he's gone down to a status of a garbage can. Jeff Yancey used to be one of the higher up over in Niagara, and he tried to exercise his authority over those in Toronto at 268 Atwell. But now he can't. Kevin Jeffrey, who is related to Melinda Jeffrey, tried to exercise his authority, but what has happened with the ultimate arrest of Kevin Jeffrey and the arrest of Jeff Yancey, and now Lisa and Greg has gone back to St. Catharines, and they have been questioned by the police, and they have yet to be arrested. Both Greg and Lisa. As well, Alex is still around. Alex is in Mississauga. He moved into where Kevin Jeffrey was staying. Kevin Jeffrey was arrested over in Detroit while he was trying to cross the border into the U.S., and that's what happened. And that came down as a rippling effect, because my guess, and this is just me guessing, is that what's going to happen is like when someone like Kevin Jeffrey and Jeff Yancey get arrested, and they're going to be higher up in the organization, and their status in the organization as they are, they're going to end up singing like canaries. So when they sing like canaries, people like Jonas Regato, Melanie Regato, Melinda Jeffrey, as well as other individuals like Lorna Brown, Lillian Brown, Sandra Long, all of them will end up, the rippling effect will come down, and that's what will happen. So any one of those individuals who've been involved in that organization over in Toronto, because of those of higher up in Niagara, where one of the largest the satanic organizations is situated next to Hamilton, because the higher up, the ultimate higher up that made Jeff Yancey is actually, he's located in Hamilton. So, anyways, I would like to speak once again, about betting schedules and how that has, how did that come about? In a church like Toronto, how it was birthed out of the Great Awakening and the spiritual Great Awakening that Lonnie Frisbee, Chuck Smith, Greg and Kathy Lowry down in the United States, and we all know how it worked. If you saw the Jesus Revolution, we all know that Lonnie Frisbee had used Chuck Smith's church, Calvary Chapel, and then it was birthed out of that. And Greg and Kathy Lowry has birthed the Harvest Church. Excuse me for manifesting. If you're uncomfortable with that, I apologize. And then, so that was founded, and we do know that Lonnie Frisbee and John Wimber got together, and then they founded the Vineyard Church, and that John Wimber was talked to John and Carol, or not, with Catherine Coleman, and then they founded the church, the Vineyard Church, up here. There was this big, huge meeting, and by the way, Catherine Coleman never liked John or not. Anyway, so what had happened, now this is a way betting had came into, betting was invented, or I don't say invented, because invented is for the good of the society, was instituted, can we say that? The church, Catch the Fire Toronto, which was Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship, which was Toronto Vineyard, which was founded by John Wimber, the Vineyard Movement, Lonnie Frisbee, John Wimber, and eventually John Carroll, who had been praying for a revival. So, all the way back when they were in Stratford. So, what had happened is that John Arnott had decided to institute betting schedules, raping schedules for young women, because Mary Audrey Raycroft was pregnant with John's daughter, and she was one of the first companions that John Arnott had, and that's how it happened. So Mary Audrey Raycroft who was made the women's minister, and Rachel Raycroft was John's daughter, and so what they needed to do, excuse me, is that's how John instituted raping schedules, because he gave his Mary Audrey Raycroft's husband a job on the board of directors, when he also gave Mary Audrey Raycroft the job as the women's minister, and because of all the anger that was happening and what was going on, and because John is and was a pedophile, he actually had decided at that point, and that's when the enemy started to come in. The spirit of perversion. This is more than perversion, my friends. This is a crime, and that's what happened. That's how betting schedules were happening, and then that's how they ended up with clauses, and that's how they ended up with clauses for companions. They ended up with betting schedules, and for every single woman, which, when I think about it now in terms of reasoning it, we're talking on the cusp of what the women's movement and feminism had begun. So I believe, and this is just me thinking, when you think about it, this was during the rise of feminism, and this was during the rise of equality, and this was during the rise of women's rights. If you're hearing of a dog bark, that's a dog outside. That's what it is. But because John was a pedophile, and is a pedophile, wanted to put women down in their place, and buy Mary Audrey Raycroft off, because Mary Audrey Raycroft was pregnant with Rachel, he instituted these betting schedules for every single woman who would ever want to be a leader, and if he so chose, for their daughters of leaders or staff members of any Catch the Fire church. Now, it wasn't Catch the Fire at the time, it was a Vineyard church. So any Vineyard church within wherever. I went to a Vineyard church when I was with Youth with a Mission doing my discipleship my DTS and SBS. When I was doing that, I went over, they encouraged us to go to a church on Sundays, so we didn't, weren't secluded, and, they encouraged us. So I went to a Vineyard church over in Penticton, the Penticton Vineyard Church in British Columbia, when I was out in Winfield doing my DTS. So that's how it was instituted. And you want to know something? That's how the male leadership, this is my opinion, that's how the male leadership has kept the female leadership down. When I had stated, I've had conversations before with those who were listening as well, when I had stated the true why were companionships instituted. Companionships were instituted because Carol was sick with cancer and John needed to have sex. And that's why. We all know that 80% of all marriages fail, one, because of the man is not being satisfied in the bedroom. Don't even think about whether the woman's being satisfied in the bedroom. Or two, finances. If there's an issue with finances, and that could be as a result of a job loss or just in general finances, lack of finances, and which has a rippling effect, and not being able to have a provision of a home and food, and that causes stress on a marriage. So that's why companionships were instituted, because a woman, the wife of a man who was a leader, could not sexually satisfy a man. And so John had said, well, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to introduce this, and we're going to... Now, I'm not going to say that Lonnie Frisbee wasn't exonerated of this. Lonnie Frisbee, it was the 60s. He lived on in a communal type of situation, and yes, Lonnie Frisbee did have his time with women. Lonnie Frisbee was accused of being homosexual. He was not a homosexual. He was, in the very least, Lonnie Frisbee was accused by his brother that he was a homosexual because his brother was angry. There were some family issues going on there, so his brother accused Lonnie of being a homosexual. That's my phone. I'm not answering it. So that's why Lonnie Frisbee was never homosexual. And that was the 60s, right? So Carol was sick. John needed someone to sexually satisfy them. And then so what happened is that men would go to John in the early days and say, my wife is sexually not satisfying me. And because I found this out. It's like one of those little things that is not spoken about, but people find out. And John said, well, you know what? This is what we do. If you are not being sexually satisfied, you have two avenues to go. You can go and we can find you a companion. That is, you have 3 months to see if this woman is going to satisfy you. And if she does, you can give her you give her money. Every month you can give her money, and if this woman is satisfying you, and you are together, and you I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, you're compatible for 3 months. After the 3 months and you want to continue this, then go right ahead. You be your companion. And the only thing is that your wife has to like the woman, and your wife has to tell the woman what to wear, has to be responsible, and making sure that woman is appropriately dressed, appropriate everything, right? And that's why. So, And then the other thing was is what with betting, they had that whole thing with betting reaping schedules, and that you could never be a leader, or you can never speak, or you can never hold a position of leadership, or now it's getting to be a staff for that matter, unless I'm waiting for them to do volunteers for staff for that matter, without having a raping schedule. And that's why when I found out, I said, no, this is so very wrong. It's unbelievably wrong. We have men who are not only before I became aware of what was happening with the children, and Mary Audrey instituting betting schedules, raping schedules for little girls and little boys, and giving them crystal methadone and giving them drugs, and doing that with Sandra Abrams. Then we find out that it's happened at Fresh Wind, and then we find out that it's happening. It goes beyond being young women, and that's what it was, young women. It goes beyond being men who are taking away young women's virginities on a regular basis and enjoying this, and people who and wives of these men who cannot say a damn word for sake of losing their leadership, for sake of losing their jobs. They can't say a damn word. And women who, because you're single or you're in a leadership position, cannot say anything and cannot do anything because you, for sake of not only losing that, but for sake of having a reputation in the world. If it was happening in the world, then what would it be? In the world, it would be an extramarital affair, and that's cause stems for divorce. In the Christian church, it is not allowed to be divorced because of what your man is doing. The woman has to say a blind eye. Now, when I speak about what Melanie did, what Melanie's been doing it, and at first I like Melanie. I like Melanie a lot. I liked her as a youth leader. I liked her before I realized what she was doing, and I tried to help her. I prayed for her because she was fed amphetamines, and because she became a product of what the environment is over there. Melanie stays in that office because on any given day, on any given hour, any man would come in and say, you've been a companion to John, you've been a companion to this man, you've been go drop your panties, get over into the encounter room, or get over to the Sandman Hotel. And I have been told repeatedly that you're not going to have any money. Sandra Long has repeatedly said that, and so has Linda Cooley. Linda Cooley has repeatedly said, unless I see you in a vetting schedule or in a private meeting, as they so call it, you will not be receiving any money via a lawsuit, via any companionship money at all. Now, do you know what that is? That's sexual extortion. I think that's what it's called, sexual extortion. Because of Jonas Huerto, I live my life with a camera. I live my life, that's Sandra and Jonatas, I live my life with a microphone embedded in my eardrum. I can hear, I can go anywhere now. They have been told by Duncan to turn it down when I'm out, so it's really not, they really can't hear. But when you have people who know where the microphone is and it's embedded in my eardrum, and it's turned down in my hearing aid and basically off, but it's still embedded in my eardrum, and I can hear a member of the board of directors who in the satanic organization, his status as a cheetah, say to me repeatedly as I'm riding the subway with two young girls, spread your legs, I can't wait till you turn off your panties for me, Michelle. Constantly. What is that? Not only did he say that, he said Catch the Fire has been founded on the basis of exploiting our women and molesting the children and raping girls. That's how Catch the Fire is founded, and that's how Catch the Fire will stay. Catch the Fire has been founded on that. and that's how we like it. Do you like that, members of Cast Fire who are strong, righteous, and true? Do you like that? I personally followed the Judeo-Christian ethic of repentance and forgiveness. I was kicked out of Cast Fire Toronto because of Ash and Melinda Jeffries. The whole idea was to get me out because Ash was jealous that Murray was flirting with me, and because Melinda Jeffries was told by Lisa Satchel to get me out of the church. And by Ed Verhaven, actually, to get me out of the church. They received, Sandra Long received, and Ash received a lot of money to get me out of the church. But what continued happening is when they realized that St. Catherine's didn't matter, but they realized that once I moved to Mississauga, that I may not have gotten out of the church. But Linda Cooley said to me, at one point through the microphone, yes, Linda Cooley of Linda Cooley Ministries, that this is a $4 million lawsuit. That was over a year and a half ago. Linda Cooley said that it was $4 million. I said 7. Duncan said 3.5 when we talked about it. I said 7, and then he said 3.5, and then Sandra Long says, okay, it's $3.5 million plus $3.5 million in gift cards. Okay, I said fine. 3.5 million in check. Cashier's check, and $3.5 million in gift cards. When I was coming back from Mimico Go station yesterday, walking down Judson Street, Ash and Sandra were sitting in a vehicle. Ash and Sandra expected to see me with a suitcase that I would get off at Mimico, walk down Judson, take the Islington bus to Long Branch with a suitcase, a flowered suitcase, because Jay McQuiggan said that too as well, because I was living on the streets, that I was going to go down, take the Islington bus over to Long Branch, get on at Long Branch, go to Burlington, and then head over to St. Catharines, because I live on the streets of St. Catharines, and I buy and deal with the mother down in St. Catharines, and I come into the city on a daily basis, and then I take young children out, and I get them in betting schedules and hotels in downtown Toronto. Well, what they did see was someone who was very tired from taking the transit, very tired from spending the day with my family, my Nigerian family, because I got up at 7 in order to go over and to get everything ready, to get myself ready and go and travel to Scarborough. And what they did see is someone who stopped at the house in which I rent the room, opened the door, put my things in, and say hi to the dog. Very mistaken. Now that they're rounding up everybody. They're rounding up everybody. Those who are high in status to the ones who are patsies. They're rounding them up. Now maybe they'll round them up. And my prayer has been that the veil of secrecy will be open, and that the door of truth, that the veil of secrecy will be lifted, and that the door of truth will be open. I think it is opening. I think it is opening. You don't have to agree with me. I don't care. You don't have to like me. Not a big deal. You can support me. Those who do support me, I thank you, and I appreciate it, and more than you'll ever know. This is my life now. I'm not going back to St. Catharines. All my things were sold. Except for 4 boxes, and I'm praying that they'll reach me, of personal documents. Everything. Everything's gone. Everything that I've ever collected. I had a movie collection worth over hundreds of thousands of dollars. Everything I owned. Why? Because people like Jeff Yancey, because people like Sandra Long, because people like Ed Verhaven, and because people like Melanie and John Srigato set out 4 years ago to ruin my life. And in ruining my life, they figured that if all of my things were sold in St. Catharines, I'd go running back to St. Catharines. Why would I go back to St. Catharines when there's a $20 million price on my head? Those who get me gets $20 million and the status of being, I think the highest is a jackal. I think it is. Maybe higher. I don't know what else is higher. I know what else is higher. Our Heavenly Father. And what else is higher? His throne room and the storehouse of an inheritance from his throne room. That's higher than any status of any organization that could be. That's higher than any one of us as humans are. And as we are heading into Passion Week this week, and as we are heading into this season of preparation, this season of new life, ultimately that came from the death on the cross on Good Friday and the glorious resurrection on Easter Sunday morning, I thank you, and I hope that you can continue to seek his face as to whether or not I'm telling the truth and whether or not the community that you belong to over Catch Fire Toronto is a place where you want to continue to belong to, knowing full well that the leadership and the staff are doing this to children. And I also I will continue to pray for Cadus, and I will continue to pray for those who are coming over